In the dry desert around Bethlehem, a series of events happened that would change Jacob's family forever. It was there, in the hot sun, that the fight for Rachel's life took place while Benjamin was being born. The only sounds that could be heard were the moans and cries of a mother who was about to find out her terrible fate. Even the stifling heat didn't take part in the action. Or could the forces of nature have played a role in a terrible outcome? In this first line, I want you, dear reader, to get lost in this story, where every detail could help you figure out what happened to Rachel. From what the Bible says, we know that Rachel died because of what? Genesis says that Rachel died while giving birth because of very serious problems. This has been a topic of discussion for hundreds of years. However, besides the literal meanings, there may be other meanings or secret factors that the old writings do not fully show. How did Jacob's loss of Rachel affect his life and the life of his son Benjamin? Rachel's death not only made Jacob very sad, but it also changed Benjamin in a way that would affect future generations. How did this loss change the way this biblical family interacted and made decisions in the future? By looking into these questions, we not only show how complicated the events being told were, but we also get a new view of how these stories have affected people emotionally and historically. After this terrible event, Jacob continued to be very important in the development of the Israelites, but he did so with a sad heart. But Rachel's story gets even more serious when we look back at her first meeting with Jacob, which happened in a very beautiful and important way. Jacob set out on a trip to get away from his angry brother Esau. He ended up in the land of Aram, where he and Rachel would find safety and a new purpose. The book of Genesis gives a detailed account of his arrival at the well where Rachel was taking care of her flock. This event represents the meeting of two people who were meant to be together. Rachel's beauty and hard work quickly won Jacob's heart. Moved by a mix of admiration and fate, Jacob did an amazing act of strength by lifting the stone out of the well, which was a powerful metaphor for the problems they would face together. After that, Rachel would always be a part of Jacob's life, and their relationship would shape his history and the history of his children and grandchildren. As we try to figure out the secrets and feelings surrounding Rachel's life and death in this video, we think about how Bible stories continue to reveal deep truths about people and God's plan. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on alerts so that you don't miss any of this spiritual and historical journey that still has a lot to show you. As we continue to piece together Rachel's story, I'd like to hear your thoughts and ideas. Have there been times when you felt like your faith was being put to the test? Tell us about your events in the space below. Feel free to leave a super thanks if this story moves you and you want to support this work. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your donation. Thank you so much for your help, continuing to tell the story of Rachel's amazing trip. He was already deeply in love with Rachel and couldn't wait to marry her. He told Rachel's father, Laban, that he would work for 7 years in exchange for her hand in marriage. Jacob, filled with love and excitement, worked hard as a shepherd with an energy that can only be found in people who are in love. For him, the years went by quickly because every day brought the hope of a future with Rachel. Once the 7 years were up, Jacob, who was antsy and angry, went to see Laban and, using verse 21 of Genesis 29:21, begged for his prize. Then Laban set up a big feast and invited all the men in the area to the wedding feast. What Jacob didn't know was that Laban was planning a deception that would change their lives for good. Laban swapped Rachel for his oldest daughter Leah while it was still dark and the tents were nearby. The trick was hidden by the cover and the darkness, and Jacob married Leah without realizing the switch. They didn't talk to Laban until dawn the next day, when Jacob found out the truth. He was very angry and sad. In order to explain what he had done, Laban said that in his country, the oldest daughter was always married first. However, he asked Jacob to marry Rachel too, but only if he worked for another 7 years. Jacob loved Rachel so much that he agreed to the deal, even though it was hard for him. He spent the week of parties with Leah before marrying Rachel. As the years went by, Jacob's family relationships with his wives and concubines got more complicated, with fights and strong feelings. Even though Leah was the first wife, she always felt like Rachel was more important than her because Jacob loved Rachel so much. She had 4 boys with him: Judah, Simeon, Reuben, and Levi. With each child, she tried in vain to win back a little more of Jacob's love, but he still loved Rachel. Rachel, on the other hand, was in pain because she couldn't get pregnant. She felt very sad and envious of Leah's fertility because she couldn't have children. In her last-ditch effort, she made Jacob do something. "I will die if you don't give me children." In Genesis 30 verse 1, it says that Jacob, who was angry, said that it wasn't him who controlled fertility, but God. In this situation, Rachel did what most people did at the time. She gave her maid, Bilhah, to Jacob as a mistress, so that she could have children in her name. There were 2 boys born to Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali. Leah then did the same thing and gave her maid, Silpah, to Jacob. Jacob also had 2 sons, Gad and Asher. This complicated web of relationships and the constant fight for love and acceptance had a huge impact on everyone's personality and future, making for a sad but very human family story. Rachel was determined to get pregnant, so she tried a number of standard ways that were thought to help women get pregnant. As part of these rituals, people used mandrake, an old plant that was thought to have sexual and reproductive powers. People thought that these magical roots could help women who were having trouble getting pregnant. Reuben, Leah's oldest son, found some of those plants while he was going through the fields one day. When he got home with the mandrakes, Rachel saw them and saw a chance. She asked Leah for some. Leah made Rachel an offer because she knew how desperate she was. She would give her the mandrakes in trade for spending the night with Jacob instead of Rachel. People had high dreams for the mandrakes, but the effects they wanted did not happen right away. Rachel was getting more and more angry, but she wasn't going to give up. She kept praying earnestly for a divine answer, and her faith stood firm. Rachel's hard work paid off in the end. The book of Genesis says that in chapter 30, verse 22, God heard her prayers and made her pregnant. Rachel got pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Joseph. When he named him, he felt relieved and thankful, saying that God had taken away his shame. Rachel's newfound hope was shown by Joseph, whose name means add. She now hoped for more children. Rachel was happy when Joseph was born, and she was also made more important in the family, so she would always have a place of honor and respect. Joseph became one of the most important people in Bible history as he grew up, getting to be governor of Egypt and being very important in helping his family stay alive during a very bad famine. But there was still more to the story for Rachel. She had another child many years after giving birth to Jose. The second baby brought a lot of happiness and a lot of excitement. At this point, Jacob had left Laban's land with his family to follow God's directions and was on his way back to Canaan. The trip back was long and difficult, especially since Rachel was very far along in her pregnancy. She knew there were risks because she had already been through a lot when she had Jose, but the happiness of having another child was stronger than the fear. As Rachel and Jacob continued their trip back to the Promised Land, they were feeling a mix of hope and worry about when they would get there. As Jacob's wagon got closer to Ephrath, which would become Bethlehem, something that had been planned for a long time was about to happen. In spite of this, more good things would happen in Rachel's life because of the promise in the name of Joseph. But the conditions under which this second child would be born were not at all ideal. In Rachel's case, she went into labor in a place and time without modern medical tools. The limited medical help did not have facilities for difficult babies. The story in Genesis 35:16-17 says that the birth was very hard. As they got closer to Ephrath, the pain and issues they hadn't planned for got worse. She tried to calm Rachel by telling her that she would have the baby, even though she was in a lot of pain. Even though she told her to be brave, Rachel knew the risks. Her life was on the edge, and she was scared she wouldn't get to see her son grow up. The fact that she was in constant, severe pain showed how bad the consequences were. It was clear that Rachel was completely worn out and about to die when she gave birth. She showed both her pain and her love by giving the baby the name Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. It was clear from his name that he was born under terrible conditions. There are two feelings that come with Benoni's birth: the joy of birth and the pain of soon-to-be lost loved ones. When Jacob saw how badly Rachel was hurt, he felt very sad. He chose to change the baby's name from Benoni to Benjamin, which means son of the right hand, or son of happiness. That change was important for more than one reason. To begin, it represented Jacob's attempt to turn a sad event into a happy memory as a tribute to his love for Rachel that would never end. The new name, Benjamin, also showed how important the son would be in the family, since he was Jacob's last child with Rachel. As written in Genesis 35:18, this event caused the whole family to feel very strongly and change in big ways. Benjamin was Jacob and Rachel's youngest son. He would go on to start the tribe of Benjamin, which is one of the 12 Israelite groups. This group was very important to the growth of the country of Israel. They had a big impact on important events and produced famous people like Saul, who became the first king of Israel. The story of Benjamin and his children and grandchildren reminds us of Rachel's lasting impact, which is full of both sadness and hope for her people. A big change happened in Israel when Saul was elected as king. It went from being a group of tribes led by judges to a unified government. This story showed how the tribe of Benjamin had a big impact on the history of the country. Not only did Saul come from the tribe of Benjamin, but so did the prophet Paul, who was born in Tarsus and was first known as Saul. In his letters, Paul talked a lot about his ancestry. Romans 11:1 shows that Paul identified himself as an Israelite, a son of Abraham, from the tribe of Benjamin. The lineages of famous people like Saul and Paul showed that Benjamin's legacy would live on. While Rachel was still alive, her death hurt Jacob and his family very much. In his deep grief, the father buried Rachel on the way to Ephrath, which became known as Bethlehem. To remember Rachel, Jacob built a monument over her grave. This would always be a reminder of how much he loved and cared for her. As written in verses 19 and 20 of the book of Genesis, Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is now called Bethlehem. Jacob built a tombstone over her grave. This is still the stone that marks Rachel's grave. Along with marking Rachel's final resting place, this statue also showed how her life would live on and how her story would continue to inspire respect in future generations. The mystery of her death, on the other hand, led experts and clerics to argue and guess. Among the most talked about ideas was the idea that Rachel may have died too soon because Jacob may have cursed her. This point of view was based on a specific event that happened with Laban's household gods. Rachel took her dad's gods and hid them when Jacob and his family chose to leave Laban's house. When Laban found out about the theft, he went after Jacob and his friends. During the fight, Jacob cursed the person who stole the gods, saying that person would not live. He did not know that Rachel had done this. Some people say that this curse came true when Rachel died, but the Bible doesn't say that there was a straight link between the curse and her death. The story of the stolen gods and the curse that followed makes me really think about Rachel's actions and what they mean. Her stealing the idols goes against what people would expect her to do because she is devoted to one God, which adds a moral depth to her story. This episode not only shows the problems between family members and between characters, but it also shows that Bible characters are never clear-cut. Their lives and actions continue to make people think and argue. Different ideas about Rachel's death, such as seeing it as God's punishment for worshipping false gods or as the result of an unintended curse, show how complicated it is for people to find meaning in tragedies. Many generations have used Rachel's death while she was giving birth to Benjamin to try to figure out how faith, fate, and morals all work together. The Bible doesn't say that stealing images caused her death, but some scholars think that since she didn't follow God's rules, it could have had bad spiritual effects. This theory is based on the idea that breaking God's rules, especially ones that go against His commands, can lead to heavenly judgments or corrections, though the details and circumstances of these are often unclear and can be interpreted in different ways. On the other hand, the idea that Rachel's frantic pleas for children might have been a sign or a self-fulfilling prophecy adds another tragic layer to her story. Rachel may have unintentionally set the course of her last days when she was in a lot of pain. This idea says that words spoken during times of strong feeling can have long-lasting effects that change the course of events in ways that are hard to understand at the time. These thoughts come to a bigger conclusion about Rachel's story. It's not just a sad set of events, it's also an interesting story about faith, persistence, and how people's actions affect God. Rachel's life, which was full of love, hardship, and sadness in the end, has been used throughout history to show how complicated the relationship is between what people want and what God wants. In conclusion, Rachel's story makes you think more deeply. How do we make sense of the ways that God deals with the world? Finally, even though we can't fully understand God's plans, the story of Rachel shows us how important it is to accept the way God sets out for each of us, even when things go wrong. Now, tell me what you think about what happened in Rachel's life. Do you think that what she did and what happened as a result were part of a bigger plan? Or do you think the ideas about his death are just people trying to make sense of something that can't be explained? Tell us what you think in the comments. I hope that this movie has helped you understand and think about Rachel's life better. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the reminder bell if you can relate to these stories of faith and getting through hard times, or if you just want to keep learning from the Bible. Share the video with your family and friends and click like if you liked it. Thank you for following us to the end of this amazing story. May God be with you always. Amen.